Hello, students. Here's a little video that I made with some background and some context about the film Good Night and Good Luck. First off, I think most of you are probably familiar with the Red Scare, but just in case you are not, this is what we call this period of time after World War II, when there was this intense fear, almost like a hysteria about communism, and allegations of communism could be used to attack anyone who was critical of the government. The worst thing in the world you could call someone was to call them a communist. And the label of communist or socialist was used to blast many artists, civil rights leaders, filmmakers. There's a number of films that kind of deal with this. Trumbo is another film that talks about, maybe some of you have seen it, talks about a screenwriter whose career was seriously injured, whose career was seriously hurt. McCarthy, sometimes we refer to McCarthyism. He was a senator from Wisconsin, not a particularly influential or powerful politician, although he used sort of fear of communism to propel himself into the national spotlight. He was really one of the leading proponents of the attack on alleged communists. He gave a famous speech where he held up an envelope. He says, in this envelope, I have the names of 100 known communists who work for the US government. No one ever saw this list. There probably was no list, but he's sort of famous for making these allegations without evidence. Now, this incident is referred to specifically in the film Milo Radulovich. He was an Air Force lieutenant who was kicked out of the military because he was accused of having communist sympathies. His family was originally from Yugoslavia, and there was really no hard evidence that was produced other than the fact that his sister and father read Eastern European newspapers. They wanted to stay in touch with their homeland, and that was enough to label him as a communist. And for any of you who are from outside the United States, I think we have a few international students in the class. Maybe you're just here for college, or maybe you immigrated here. The very idea that you could be attacked for trying to stay in touch with your homeland, maybe you look at a website, maybe you email people back home. The very fact that that is considered suspect is troubling, right? That is troubling, and so Murrow took up the case and did an episode of his TV show about this incident and how unfair it was. Who was Murrow? Okay, Murrow was a journalist who worked for CBS News. He became very famous during World War II. He was reporting from the bombing of London, and his phrase "good night and good luck," which he picked up for his later TV show, comes from this period of time. Evidently, or so I've read, that British people, this is what they would say to each other in the evening: "Good night and good luck." Because they didn't know if they were going to survive the bombing that was probably going to happen with the Germans bombing London. After the war, he develops a TV show for CBS. It was called See It Now, and it was a hard-hitting, serious news program. Don Hewitt was actually the director of the program. Don Hewitt later went on to create 60 Minutes. They actually referenced Don in the movie, and I'm pretty sure that they're talking about Don Hewitt. But then Murrow also had this, kind of just makes me laugh. He also had this other show, Person to Person, which got higher ratings. Person to Person got higher ratings, and it was very light entertainment, kind of like tabloid. In the movie, there is a scene where Murrow is interviewing Liberace, which is, the opposite of what I would consider to be serious, hard news. But I just think it's interesting that Murrow was able to balance both sides of this persona that he had. William Paley. Now, this is not the real William Paley. This is an actor who plays William Paley in the movie. But I just wanted to explain. He was the creator of the CBS radio network, which then became a television network. And he makes reference to affiliates. So I just wanted to remind everyone that broadcast networks are not one single entity. We talk about them like that, but these broadcast networks, I'm talking about the legacy television broadcast networks, including CBS, are really a collection of locally owned affiliates. Okay, every city of a reasonable size has its own affiliate. CBS has affiliates, NBC has affiliates, ABC, and now Fox as well. So the affiliates are the ones who actually hold the broadcast license, okay, and they are the ones who have a significant amount of control. If CBS, the network, decides to air a program, but the local affiliate in, say, Salt Lake City does not want to air it, it does not have to air in Salt Lake City. So when he's referring to the affiliates, just be aware that affiliates do have a pretty significant amount of power. Also, Fred Friendly, again, this is George Clooney who was portraying Fred Friendly. He was the president of CBS News, and he helped Murrow create some of these early TV news programs. And Fred Friendly and Edward R. Murrow already had it in for McCarthy. They wanted to take down McCarthy. They did not think that what he was doing was correct and honest. And they finally saw an opportunity with the Milo Radulovich, however you say that gentleman's name. That was the incident that propelled them to actually move forward. All right, some issues associated with the movie. There's a tension between FCC licensing and freedom of the press. Right, we've talked about this before. You need a license from the government to operate a radio or television station. You do not need a license to print a newspaper. Okay. Does that interfere if the purpose of journalism is to hold government accountable and to provide sort of another check and balance on the government? um, Maybe your license is going to get pulled if you attack the government too hard. Okay, I think there's some tension there. There's also this issue of, are journalists merely stenographers or critics? A stenographer is the person who writes down or types down everything that's said in court. They just transcribe what's being said. And when people refer to journalists as stenographers, that's a negative, right? Um, if a politician stands up at a podium and says something that is blatantly untrue, that has no basis in reality, is a journalist's job just to report exactly what was said? Well, then you're just giving a platform to misinformation. Or is the job of the journalist to correct factual errors that, no, the politician said this, which is factually untrue? And there's continuing debate over this, continuing debate over this. Is it your job just to put a microphone in someone's face and broadcast whatever they say, or is your job to interpret it, evaluate, and provide some type of fact check? Okay, there's an ongoing debate. There's also the pressure from advertisers. We see this in the movie when Murrow's show loses its sponsor. That's really the decline of the show. And we collectively, as a society, have decided that we do not want government funding of media, that we would rather commercial interests and advertisers fund media. And I'm not saying that's bad system. I'm not saying that's wrong, but there are some repercussions that come with that. That if an advertiser doesn't like what you're saying or decides to pull their, advertising dollars, that's a pretty tremendous type of editorial control that the advertisers have. So just be aware of that. And then finally, the movie is not entirely accurate. Okay, surprise, surprise. Hollywood likes to exaggerate the power of the media. George Clooney was apparently a driving force getting this movie made, and he wanted to portray journalists as, being so heroic. Murrow gets too much credit for taking down McCarthy. Many journalists were part of the effort to criticize him and attack him, and public opinion about McCarthy had already turned by the time Murrow decided to attack him. So I'm not saying the movie is completely wrong, but just be aware that the movie kind of glorifies him a little bit too much. And anyway, just be aware of that. Okay, anyway, I just wanted to give you some information here, help you understand the movie a little bit better. I enjoy it, I enjoy the movie, and hopefully watching a black and white movie is not something too uncomfortable for most of you.